All right, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you, Director.
You bet, thank you. Thank you all for joining us this morning on our final public comment before we file the event wagering rules with the Secretary of State's office. I'd like to thank everybody for their involvement over the past 7 months of getting event wagering and fantasy sports started in the state. I think you've all seen the reports that it's been very successful. Over these 7 months, we've been reviewing the rules. We've been checking to see where we needed to clarify the rules or make some changes. We sent those proposed drafts out last week. We've taken into consideration the comments we got back. You can see the changes that we've made. They are the ones that are underlined. And so that's where we'd like to focus today's discussion as we go through the rules and take any last minute feedback, etc. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Warren Nichols, who's been working around the clock on the rules for many, many months now to kind of start taking us through.
Thank you, Director. So please feel free to raise your hand, ask any questions as we go through these. If you have comments specific to any of these changes, please feel free to jump in. So the first one we'll talk about here is definition number 20, R19-4-101-20, which is an additional sentence we added to the definition of marketing affiliate. That sentence essentially will allow the department to not need to license teams and tribes as event wagering operators, also doing marketing affiliate type of work. So that fix will be in place. The department very shortly will announce a process for anyone that did obtain that license as a team or tribe to receive the process for receiving a refund on that license if that is so requested. So that's how we will move forward with that one.
All right, any questions or items on that change? All right, seeing none, moving on.
Okay, the next change is R19-4-105, procedures for licensing. There was a couple of errors in here that the department wanted to fix. One was we had an error on time, which is also in 104D, related to the limited event wagering operators. The statute allowed that license to be 2 years, so we were correcting that to the 2-year license and also to the fee that goes with the 2-year license period as opposed to the 5-year license period. There was also a fix in 105C, which was just a change to a typo subsequent to the original fix, which is that the 180-day rule for beginning operations will be now relative to when you were issued a license. So that was a fix that we made there. Also, the annual payment will go within 12 months of being issued your license.
All right, any questions or comments on that one? Seeing none, moving on.
Okay, the next change is 105J. 105J, we did have a bit different language, but we cut it down to this final sentence in 105J. The department may revoke a license if the responsible party fails to continue operations.
All right, Steve. You're muted, Steve.
Yeah, sorry. I'm never good at that. Thank you, Warren. We appreciate very much the changes that have been made. We think this is a significant improvement from the robust language. We do have one concern, though, that we wanted to talk about, and that is the use of the responsible party language. So it says the department may revoke a license if the responsible party fails to continue operations. From Navajo's perspective, we have the license and we have a management services provider, which I understand is a responsible party. And I would just hate to have some activity by a responsible party, a management services provider, that the licensee or the licensee either didn't know about or didn't have control over, and then we find ourselves having our license revoked. So I wondered if it was really necessary to use the words responsible party, or if we could instead use language like event wagering operator or designee. That's my suggestion on that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. Mike?
Yeah, good morning, Director Warren, everybody else. Yeah, so the nation was focused really on the same thing, on 105J. Of course, the March 30th draft allowed for revocation if there were a change in, and there was a list, but including the MSP. And here, you know, an event wagering operator could still face revocation if the MSP, you know, fails to continue operations. So I guess I think, you know, definitely join Steve in that comment. I think that this provision is greatly improved over the prior, but there is still that risk. So I think we have the question: can't an event wagering operator licensee change MSPs without risking the license? I mean, because the department really still has control, because if an EWO changes MSPs, it's got to be to another MSP licensed by the department. So I do have that question. I'm not real clear if you're entertaining questions, Director, but it's really on that same issue. Thanks.
Okay. I mean, we'll have to go back and take a look at it. And, you know, we take both of your comments down. But for the sake of this, we'll just kind of move through and hear the other comments. Is that all right, Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Director.
Okay, great. Bradley?
Good morning. This is Bradley Bledsoe Downs on behalf of the Arizona Indian Gaming Association. And we echo the comments that Mike Ellerman just provided, as well as those of Steve Hart, and we'll submit some written comments to that effect as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Bradley. I think, Richard, I think you were up next.
Yes, thank you, Director. And I just, on behalf of Tonto Apache Tribe and the Kusan Tribe, echo the statements that Steve Hart and Mike Ellerman made, and Bradley. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, Lisa? I think your hand was up.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. My comment here, and as I've stated in my written comments, is when you're dealing with licensees who were allocated a license pursuant to the procedures under 106E, they're presumably, based on the rules, their allocation was based on the combined attributes of the tribes and the partner. So whether that partner was the designee or the management service provider, the allocation was based on the combined attributes. So if the partner, whether it's a designee or the management service provider, discontinues operation, then the basis for that allocation no longer exists. And it would not be fair to allow that tribe to just get a new partner when there are at least 6 to 10 other tribes that may be interested in the license. And so, you know, the Apache Nation would disagree with any rule that would allow, you know, a tribe or a team, if we get to a point where there is an allocation process for a team, you know, that for just to be able to switch partners, and that without going through a reallocation process. If that tribe wants to take a new partner and go through the reallocation process and again get awarded a license, great. But other than that, should go through reallocation. And it's only fair to all the tribes that didn't get licenses. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate those comments. Steve Titla?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. San Carlos Apache. I'm an attorney. I also am concerned about the responsible party language in 105J. And I joined the response of Steve Hart, Mike Ellerman, Richard Berry, Bradley Bledsoe Downs on the remarks that I've made. I would object to that language. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. All right, any other comments on this item before we move along? All right, seeing none.
Okay, the next section to quickly discuss here, the next two sections are very minor. 106A, R194 106A. We just trued up some of the time periods here associated with the allocation process. We made them all a 10-day uniform number of days. We had obviously sort of squeezed some of that time frame at the outset so that we could make sure everyone was able to start before that first NFL game, but we wanted to true up these times just to make sure it was uniform. So that was the change to 106A. Andrew? Yes?
Yeah, thank you. So under the previous version you guys sent out a couple weeks ago, under 106, you had some language on temporary facility if a team has to move or has to do some construction. 2 weeks ago, there was a major fire at Mile High Stadium. Thankfully, it's not during football season. Hopefully it doesn't impact the Broncos when the season starts. But for a situation like that, where there's a catastrophic incident where they're going to have to do some work before you can utilize the full facility, or a situation like us for the Arizona Coyotes, where our lease was canceled and we have to temporarily play in a facility, having that language that was in there previously gives us a sense of comfort that our license allows us to continue doing what we're already licensed to do. So I'd like to formally request that language you previously had in there be put back.
All right, thank you, Andrew. And the reason we took out the language is I don't think we got any party signing in support of it. We already kind of we feel, and everyone was kind of pointing out, the department has the discretion to work with you. So I don't think that we the language that was in there, like I said, was pretty much roundly requested to be stripped out. I don't even recall, I don't believe the Coyotes provided any comment on the language.
Well, the language was in there and we liked it. So if there were people requesting that it be stricken, who was doing that, and under, what was the rationale for stripping it out?
Let's see here. Do you have the
Yes, so several tribes.
Yeah, we have both tribes as well as teams requesting. Let's see here. So I mean, we can make the comments. I mean, the comments are public documents, so we can make those available. But let's see here. Yeah, we got I think the Cardinals, which tribes were also. Jim Stipe, did you have something?
Yeah, Director, you can just send me a list afterwards. I don't want to hold everybody up on this, but if you could just have somebody follow up.
Yeah,
we'll go ahead, Jim.
Sure. I think anybody who wants to should see the comments. But if I think I could hit the highlights just real quick if we want to do that.
So we didn't receive any pro comments. We received only negative comments. And sort of the 4 points I took from them were that a temporary accommodation isn't allowed under the statute. And I'm not saying we necessarily agreed or disagreed when we made the decision to pull out, but this is pull out the language. But this was, you know, these are the comments we got that we reacted to. One is a temporary accommodation is not allowed under the statute, that the department doesn't have the authority to grant the temporary accommodation. And again, we don't necessarily agree or disagree. We're just, you know, looking at the rules as a whole, making a decision, but and the statute. Next would be that the rule, as a result, would have violated the compacts and might trigger the poison pill. We got that comment. We also got the comment that a sports facility is not required to be able to maintain an event wagering license. So we were only solving one little, really small problem that might not be an important issue for anybody. So because it wouldn't otherwise impact the license. So, you know, based on that as a whole, the statute and the rules, you know, we made the decision to pull it out. But you should, you know, again, anybody, Andrew, you or anybody else who wants to see the comment should see them.
Yeah, well, we'll go ahead and make the comments public, so that there's no issue there. And you know, and I know, Andrew, we've got a meeting set up later to discuss. But you know, like I mentioned at the get-go, you know, we took everybody's comments into consideration. The ones that we've got underlined are the ones that we feel we need to get resolved prior to filing with the Secretary of State. But we will continue to work on some of the issues that have been raised, you know, as we move forward and as we look and see that we need to make further changes to the rules. So, you know, we're narrowing the focus right now because these are the ones that we've identified are an issue that need to be addressed before we file with the Secretary of State.
All right. Well, I'll be talking to you later in the week more about it, Director.
Right.
So we'll chat
Thank
then.
you. All right. Any last minute items on that one before we move along? Okay. Next.
Okay. The next minor change was into 106H. This is one where we removed previously allocated, so that now just if a license becomes available, we'll have an allocation as opposed to just one that was previously allocated. This is just a technical correction to that language. Same with R19-4-107A. This is a very minor change, that just an error that was made in drafting where we needed to make sure that the designee could also be one who could notify the department with regard to a facility.
Right. Any comments? All right.
Very good. Next change is in R19-4-110F and G. 110F used to be one sentence that basically broke out these two parts that we made into F and G, so we split them into two separate sentences. So now F is just speaking specifically about advertising on news assets, including digital news assets on campus, and G is advertising or promoting event wagering is not going to be allowed on university campus except for generally available advertising. And that was some good language that we received through the comments to make it clear that if you're on TV, if you're on the radio, you know, that's generally available anywhere, that's okay, and that's not going to be a problem.
Any comments or questions on that edit? All right, seeing none.
Okay. Looks like our next change is R19-4-113C. 113C talks about the ceasing of operations. So we did make some changes to this particular sentence. The department has proposed 180 days prior to ceasing operations. The reason for that, we feel that that is the adequate amount of time to deal with future wagers, you know, all of the account distributions that'll need to be made so that we can work together to sort of work on that winding down of operations with the responsible party and make sure everything is covered and tidied up before operations stop.
Okay, Steve, looks like you got a comment. You're still on mute.
I always do that. I'm sorry. We agree that providing a written plan is smart for player protection, overall integrity issues. That just makes good sense. We think companies must be able to stop taking new bets immediately. And I'm not sure if that's your intention or not with this language. And then the last thing that I have is, I don't know, 180 days seems like an awfully long time. And so we would ask you to consider a reduced number, 30 days, 60 days, something that would be shorter. We think that makes sense. We point out that the goal, if the goal is player protection, and it should be, and we respect that, you know, there's a reserve requirement in the rules and in the statute. And the rules already state that you cannot terminate the use of a platform without ADG's prior written approval. So I think you've got some protection there. And those are my thoughts on this. Thank you.
Great, Steve. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other comments on that edit? Richard? Richard? You're muted, Richard. You're muted, Richard.
Thank you. Steve's passing bad. We with regard to the 180 days being too long, we would prefer seeing it shorter period, 30 or 60 days. Thank you.
Thanks. Bradley? Bradley?
Good morning again. And we echo the request for a short period of time. We suggest 30 days, and then possibly with the clarification of not having to continue operations after expiration of that 30-day notice period while the wind down and payment of players goes on.
Great, thanks, Bradley. All right, Steve Titler?
Yeah, I think 180 days is too long also. I would recommend something like 30 days, and I agree with the others that have raised this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, moving along. Oh, I'm sorry. Mike, I just saw your hand go up. Mike Ellerman.
Yes, thank you. I don't want to repeat what others have said, except for to add. So there is an additional protection in the existing rules at 19.4.130F, E and F, and that is that the the event wagering operator can't cancel wagers. So with the exception of obvious error, the responsible party will not unilaterally cancel wager without the approval of the department. So this circles back to the idea if the goal here is player protection, there are multiple layers of protections in place, and 180 days, you could determine that it doesn't make sense from a business perspective to continue in August, but you've got to stay open through past the Super Bowl. That's far too long. I think the nation's remarks from Chairman Norris also suggested what you're hearing from other people, just the 30 days. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. Any other last comments on this edit? Okay, thank you. Moving on.
Okay, can we change the slide? There we go. All right. R19.4.116 is our next change, and this is a very minor change as well. This was just an order change. We felt like when we read this through, it was a little bit confusing just on the order of the sentence. So the sentence is basically the same in reverse order. We think this clarifies what we want to do with cloud storage.
Any comments? Okay, moving on.
All right, so our next change is 120D. 120D, when we read through this particular sentence, we realized that the last part did not really go with the first part. This was a sentence that we had used for other things, and it really was not, this part of the sentence was not necessary here, so we cut it out. If we require additional testing, we're obviously going to let you know. There's going to be a reason for it. Something is going on, but it's not just specifically to non-compliance. It could be to some other issue that we think additional testing is maybe necessary.
Comments? Seeing none, moving on.
Okay, the next one, very minor change again in 121, where we also wanted to give suppliers the ability to notify us of a shipment if they're the ones who are providing the item, shipping the item.
Any comments or questions? All right, moving on.
Okay, 126A. 126A, we just wanted to clarify a little bit about our periodic retest of the event wagering system, in that we wanted it to be very well understood, clearly understood the situation in which that could be waived based on changes that have been made. So hopefully this change does, in that if it was not a comprehensive, if it was not comprehensive, then we did want to have that recertification. So if the changes were all minor that were made, we wanted to clarify that we still wanted to have the system recertified every 15 months.
Comments? All right, seeing none, moving on.
Okay, and finally, R19 129F. This was a change that was made, that was added in with regard specifically to other events, which is sort of the undefined, a little bit questionable term from the statute. So given a little barriers around other events.
All right, any comments? Okay.
I believe those are the ones that we wanted to cover. If there's any others that you have any questions on, please feel free to let us know.
Andrew, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for having this event, and as you've always done, considering our comments, we greatly appreciate that. Just one thing, kind of a two-parter on R19 4112, which is the privilege fee language. We had suggested in our written comments, and kind of just wanted to restate for the record here. There's two concerns about how negative amounts are addressed. In the event that a operator has a negative amount of event wagering of adjusted gross event wagering receipts. The first is, we suggested language to allow operators to carry that over from month to month. And then second, and I think that this goes specifically to, kind of just a technical concern, is there is an acknowledgement in 194112B2 that if for a year an operator has a overpayment, that based on, after looking at the annual audit, that the overpayment shall be credited to the next monthly fee payment. However, there's not really an acknowledgement or anything about what happens if the overpayment is more than what the next monthly fee payment would be. So let's say you do the annual audit, and I'm just using round numbers for the sake of it, and it was a $500,000 difference, and your next monthly payment is $400,000. What happens? Obviously you would not make the payment, then you wouldn't, because it would be more than your next monthly payment. But the remaining $100,000 that's owed to you as an overpayment, it's not clear about that being applied to the subsequent month, or whether you were just out of luck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a good point. I do think, as the director stated, I think that this is an issue that the department has also spent a ton of time looking at. And I think with the industry, this will be good to all sit down and get on the same page in the next review of the rules, because I do think we all need to get in and figure out the best way to look at all this.
Okay.
It's one of the challenges I think that we see from monthly reporting. You know, with daily reporting, we'd be in a little bit different position, but this is one of the challenges that we see from monthly reporting.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You bet. Matthew Kramer.
Hey, all. Thanks for taking this, Matt Kramer from BetMGM. I just have a quick question on R19-4-101-28, suspicious wagering activity. It's a little that any other prohibited activity. Just trying to figure out what does that mean, especially in terms of it being an online operator. Like prohibited, prohibited by whom? Is it local? Is it state? Is it federal? That's like comment or question one. Two, the term money laundering isn't anywhere in the reg, and I think it's, from our point of view, it's an important thing to try to capture. It's something that's only really mentioned in a few other states, and I'd say it's probably one of the things that we're trying to highlight or try to bring attention to is, the money laundering fraud typologies that we're seeing, as opposed to land-based risks, versus online operator risk.
Yeah, so to the second part, and those are good comments, Matthew. To the second part of your question, we included BSA procedures, which I believe the money laundering statute falls under the BSA procedures, and the internal control system shall include, so 4-111B11. So that's something that we're looking for, an internal control system.
Okay, so just following FinCEN guidance, not anything directly to Arizona. We're just doing follow FinCEN's guidance, report up to them, no notification to Arizona. If for any of those, anything we might see that goes via an Arizona-based account.
Well, obviously we'd like the information, but we are by our rules here looking at the BSA requirements, yes, which are federal.
Okay, all right. And then it's one final call out. Something that we're running into in other states, just want to get more clarity on, if or idea of, is the underage gaming. Like underage gaming, we know is, it's prohibited. We don't like it. We don't condone it. We don't advertise for it. We do get complaints from patrons. Now, we can't validate or invalidate these complaints when they happen. We want to make sure that we're reporting these things when they do occur to the state. However, a lot of them they're probably not legitimate. Just trying to call maybe more attention to that particular event, especially in the online space, of things that we can't validate that actually happen, such as patron says my 2-year-old got a hold of my account, made a 5-team parlay in game, which happens, and now they want their money back. There's things like this where the regs just don't cover this, so we don't want to over-report, but we don't want to under-report either. And that's where, when it comes to other prohibited activity, it's just such a vague add-on there that any ideas or thoughts that y'all can provide into that would help us greatly. Thank you.
Yeah, and Matthew, to that point, I would encourage you to reach out to Hal Wafer, who's our sports betting administrator. He and his team can have that discussion with you and sort of see where you guys feel comfortable with reporting and the information that he's looking for and his thoughts on that process. So, and that goes to any of you as operators. All right. Any other items? Okay, Steve Hart. Still on mute.
Do that every time.
We'll get you there eventually, Steve.
I think so. You know, you're training me, or you're trying. I know. Thank you.
right.
Look, I just had one last thing, and this is really more of a clarification. When in Rule 19-4-105J, and it talks about fails to continue operations, we take that to mean an actual cessation of operations without an intent to continue. So things like implementing a new technology, transitioning a new technology provider, or some sort of force majeure issue, we would not think that these would yield this kind of treatment, that is, a revocation of the license. I'm not sure what thoughts you have on that, but that was just something that I meant to speak about earlier. Particularly new technology seems to me to be something that it may be worth clarifying in the rule if you see fit to go back and make any further adjustments. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. Matthew, do you have another comment?
Nope, just didn't unraise my hand. Sorry about that.
All right, that's fine. Okay, any last minute comments or questions on the items we covered, or any of the other? I know there were some underlined items that maybe we didn't because they were such minor changes, but any last minute comments or questions before we close out this public comment session? All right. Again, we certainly appreciate everybody's involvement in the whole rule-making process from the get-go. I think we've had a very solid set of rules to begin with. We've had a very successful initial beginning to sports betting. We're going to we'll try to get all the public comments out today so you can review them and see them. We'll probably hang them on there. Our timeline, as you all are probably aware, certainly those of you who worked on the statute, is that we need to finalize and file our rules with the Secretary of State's office the 15th of April. So that's the end of this week. So we will, be working diligently and filing those rules. And again, I just want to reiterate what I said at the get-go, as well as what Warren said. On some of these other issues that are either more, they're going to involve more of a stakeholder requirement to kind of get on the same page, or those ones that are maybe not as urgent, what we're going to kind of push those off and talk about them as we do our next rule review. But again, we need to file this latest draft with the Secretary of State this Friday by the 15th. So we'll be turning that around pretty quick. All right, any last minute questions or comments? All right, thank you everybody for your time, not only today, but throughout this process. We really appreciate it. We appreciate the collaboration. As we said, we view this as a partnership. We're gonna keep these stakeholder meetings going so we get it right here in the state of Arizona. So with that, I'll go ahead and end the meeting.